When we're securing our compute instances at AWS, we want a high level of protection for that application stack. You have to define that level. Is it a stack that remains totally private, or does it need public access across the internet? You have to define what you need. Then we have to ensure the system is protected against any unauthorized access. This might be by placing a load balancer in front of the instance to provide additional protection. Or it might mean I secure access to the EC2 instances with proper identity and access management controls for my administrators. Perhaps I have to install vulnerability scanners and malware software to ensure the systems are integral and operate properly and are not hacked. All of these are my decisions. Each EC2 instance can also be ordered as a dedicated host. Now, when we look at the term instance, Amazon uses this term in kind of a generic manner to say compute. But an EC2 instance could be the entire bare metal server, where you want to place your EC2 instances on a particular bare metal server and have no other customers on that box. Or maybe it doesn't have to be that big. Maybe you want a specific dedicated virtual machine to be running on dedicated hardware. To further protect my compute resources, I should consider automating the deployments. Automating a deployment of an EC2 instance ensure that it's built exactly the same way every time. They have a very handy service called CloudFormation, which allows you to set up a script to audit infrastructure. And it could be compute instances, it could be the networking and compute, it could be a variety of infrastructure components. You could also use a third-party tool such as Puppet, Chef, or Ansible to do much the same thing. You could also further protect your EC2 instances by managing them centrally using the AWS Systems Manager. This allows you to control patching, control scripting, control the overall management of the EC2 instances from a central location. Best practice, your application stacks should be always installed on private subnets. You might think, how do I access my application stacks if they're all private? I need to access them across the internet. Well, you place a load balancer in the public subnet, and that provides access to the resource stack, which remains on private subnets, providing a higher level of protection. Other options that we can utilize for protecting our EC2 instances include firewalls. Amazon calls these firewalls security groups. I have to use a security group when I install an instance, and this allows me to define the ports that are available that are allowed to access that EC2 instance. As mentioned, we have AWS Systems Manager, where we can control our patching of our instances in our account centrally. We could also enable something called Amazon Inspector. Amazon Inspector, once installed, will give you reports on any vulnerabilities that are on your installed operating systems and the installed applications. We could also use EC2 Auto Recovery, which is a CloudWatch alarm specifically to protect EC2 instances when they run into trouble when they're operating or booting. If there are issues, automatically the EC2 instance gets launched on new hardware. So we've got a variety of options here for either protecting the actual instance itself with a security group, controlling the patching to ensure that it's centralized and always the same for all my instances, inspecting vulnerabilities with Amazon Inspector, or we can use the CloudWatch alarms to analyze and monitor and protect our instances when they run into trouble. When I'm building EC2 instances, the images that I use to build those instances should be pristine. They should be what is called golden. All the problems have been worked out. The image is perfect. This means I'm not going to have to edit that image in my production stacks. The image has been signed off, secured, and is going to be utilized in production and never changed. If I wanted to make changes to my images, I would do that work in the development or test environments. When I'm running an EC2 instance, I also want to secure exactly what that instance is allowed to do. What I can define with an EC2 instance is something called an IAM role. This actually sets up the security for the instance so it can only carry out specific tasks for a temporary period of time. And we'll be talking about IAM roles in the next section of this class. We should also consider securing our resources using load balancing and autoscaling to ensure that the resources are operational and available performance-wise, security-wise, and application-wise so that customers and clients can use the applications when they need to. You also might want to secure your host instances by signing up for a capacity reservation to ensure that your EC compute resources are always available. It's a bit of a misnomer in the cloud to assume that when you order an EC2 instance, they have the resources. Remember, AWS is a data center, and sometimes they run out of resources. If you absolutely have to ensure that a resource is available, you could consider the capacity reservation to ensure that your application is always available. And that in itself is a form of security, ensuring that the application is always available so your company doesn't get into trouble with applications that aren't available. You can also control accidental termination of my resources at AWS by enabling something called termination protection. So when you go try to delete a database or an EC2 instance, you'll get a message saying, nope, it's been protected. You can't delete it.